Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here with us this afternoon. My name is Sarah Skowinski. I'm the Literature and Language Librarian here at Portland Public Library, and I'd like to tell you about a few things before we get started with our program. First of all, we are recording this event today. Therefore, we ask that everyone please silence your devices so there are no interruptions. Restrooms are located in the hallway to my right, and you're welcome to exit through the doors to the rear whenever you need to. There are hearing assists on the table at the back of the room. If you need to use one, I am available to help. Just find me. There are also some refreshments at the back of the room that we encourage you to enjoy, with thanks to our generous sponsor, Coffee by Design. You'll find a brief survey in your program. If you didn't get a program, they're on the table near the main entrance there. If you could please fill out that survey and return it to the basket at the back of the room. This helps the library continue to provide the kind of programming that you want in your community. So thank you in advance. Also, librarians love statistics, so help us out. Now, for the reason we're all here today, poetry. Where is Linda? She is. The library is honored to sponsor the Portland Poet Laureate Project, and it is my personal pleasure to work with our current Poet Laureate, Linda Aldrich. Linda is Portland's 6th Poet Laureate. Her term started in June 2018. She has published 2 collections of poetry, Foothold and March and Mad Women, and they're both available to check out from the library if you're interested in learning more. Her poems have appeared in numerous journals and anthologies. Linda teaches English at Southern Maine Community College, and in addition to doing countless public readings and being a general champion of poets and poetry as our Poet Laureate, Linda has created this Leaf of Voices poetry series to make a fantastic array of poets and poetry accessible to our community. In the past, we have celebrated new and known poets and teaching poets, and today we celebrate Indigenous poets. Please join me in welcoming Linda Aldrich.
We'll see how this, it works. Wow, what a great audience. Thank you all for coming out on this beautiful Saturday afternoon. I've been really excited about this reading for a long time, and it's finally here. I'm delighted to welcome to the library people, poets that I maybe have met in the past, but several of you I have not met. And I'm co-hosting this event with Valerie Lawson, and I will talk a little bit more about Valerie in a minute. I wanted to say that this reading is really important. We are celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day, having been established in Maine when on April 26th, 2019, Janet Mills signed LD 179, an act to replace Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. And so Maine takes its place with 11 other states so far: Alaska, Hawaii, Louisiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, New Mexico, Oregon, South Dakota, Vermont, and Wisconsin. And there are 130 cities and towns that have designated Indigenous Peoples Day. I wanted to read a poem that has long been a favorite of mine, I think since the 80s. This is a book by Joy Harjo, who is our current U.S. Poet Laureate, our first Native American Poet Laureate. And she wrote this back in 1980. Her book came out in 82, so I've had this book for a very long time. So I'll read this by her. I give you back. I release you, my beautiful and terrible fear. I release you. You were my beloved and hated twin, but now I don't know you as myself. I release you with all the pain I would know at the death of my daughters. You are not my blood anymore. I give you back to the white soldiers who burned down my home, beheaded my children, raped and sodomized my brothers and sisters. I give you back to those who stole the food from our plates when we were starving. I release you, fear, because you hold these scenes in front of me, and I was born with eyes that can never close. I release you, fear, so you can no longer keep me naked and frozen in the winter or smothered under blankets in the summer. I release you, I release you, I release you, I release you. I am not afraid to be angry. I am not afraid to rejoice. I am not afraid to be black. I am not afraid to be white. I am not afraid to be hungry. I am not afraid to be full. I am not afraid to be hated. I am not afraid to be loved. To be loved. To be loved, fear. Oh, you have choked me, but I gave you the leash. You have gutted me, but I gave you the knife. You have devoured me, but I laid myself across the fire. You held my mother down and raped her, but I gave you the heated thing. I take myself back, fear. You are not my shadow any longer. I won't hold you in my hands. You cannot live in my eyes, my ears, my voice, my belly, or in my heart. My heart, my heart, my heart. But come here, fear. I am alive, and you are so afraid of dying. And I would like to say how honored I am to have a co-host. This is the first time I've had a co-host for part of the reading series, and I'm delighted to welcome an old friend. Valerie Lawson's work has been published in Maine Street Rag, Big City Lit, About Place, Journal, The Catch, Ibbotson Street, and others. She's been nominated for a Pushcart Prize 3 times. With her partner, Michael Brown, Lawson co-edited Off the Coast Literary Journal for 8 years and teaches poetry workshops in New England. She studied electronic publishing and book arts at the University of Maine in Machias. She served on the board of the Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance from 2013 until 2015. Most recently, she edited 3 Nations Anthology, Native Canadian, and New England Writers, published by Resolute Bear Press. And do we have some to sell today? Okay, it'll be on the back table. With poems, essays, and fiction from 58 writers. 3 Nations won the Maine Literary Award for Anthology in 2018. Yeah, warm welcome for Valerie Lawson.
Thank you, Linda. Ooh, that is a hot mic. Woohoo! Yeah. This is a mic for a performer. Thank you, Linda and Susan, and all of you for showing up on this gorgeous fall day. And it's such a pleasure to be here and be in front of you. When Michael and I moved to Maine, 13 years ago now, something like that, we moved way to the eastern part, on Passamaquoddy Bay, and shortly after we got there, it was like, wow, this would be fantastic to do something that involved 3 nations. And of course, we got busy doing all of our projects and trying to get our lives set up, and it took a while. And then I just got into this program with school, and I said, well, let's do a book. That'd be great. So It was a lot of work, but it was a labor of love, and I'm so glad that it happened because, you know, we've got these 3 communities in this area, and we all interact, we all share stuff. And then we got a new president, and it became, you know, walls and borders became concrete things, and it was really a good time to have a book come out that creates bridges rather than walls. So that's what this book was intended to be. And I thank you for being part of it, and you, Jason, for being part of it. So without further ado, I would like to introduce the poets who are going to speak. You all have a program, right? So you can kind of keep along. Great. Jason Grundstrom-Whitney is a poet, writer, songwriter, and musician who plays bass, harmonica, and various wind instruments. He is a member of several bands, including Tired Eyes and Osha Root. Tired Eyes and Friends' album Light Infused Dust was released in 2008, and Osha Root released a CD featuring Jason's music and poetry earlier this year. His poetry has been featured in 3 Nations Anthology and the Underground Writers Association's Anthology of Maine Poets. I didn't bring that up with me. Bear, Raven, and Coyote. Jason, you want to do a Vanna for me? Bear, Raven, and Coyote. I only printed off about half of the comp for this book before I got here. That's the cover. That book will be coming out in a month or so. I got another project in front of it anyway, never mind. This is his first book of poetry, and it will be published this fall. We're publishing it. Jason is a licensed social worker and currently works as substance abuse counselor, co-occurring specialist at Riverview Psychiatric Hospital. He is a husband, father, and grandfather, and a Bear Clan member of the Passamaquoddy. And before you come up, I'm going to introduce all 3 of you so that you can come up in your time instead of disrupting the program and just going. Donna Loring, right here, is an elder and former council member of the Penobscot Indian Nation. She held the position of the nation's representative to the Maine state legislature for 12 years. Her personal papers are archived in the Maine Women Writers Collection at the University of New England and available to scholars for research. UNE holds a yearly lecture series in her name, and on May 13th, 2017, she was awarded an honorary doctorate degree in humane letters. That's enormous. That's an applause-worthy thing. Donna is presently the senior advisor on tribal affairs to Governor Janet Mills. She hosts her own radio show, which is a fantastic show if you can catch it. It's Wabanaki Windows at WERU Community Radio in Orland. And Mihku Paul is a contemporary writer and artist with traditional roots. She creates beadwork on deerskin, but also writes slam poetry. When I read that in her biography, I was like, yes! Michael and I were part of the Boston Poetry Slam scene back in the Boston days. Her graphic art is meant to be a modern expression of her cultural identity, bridging the gap between past and present. Mihku hopes to convey the idea of Native identity as a vital, adaptive process that maintains tradition while embracing new techniques and materials in her artistic expression. Her first book of poetry, 20th Century Powwow Playland, published in 2014, is available for purchase. So please welcome up Jason Grundstrom-Whitney, first in the program.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Valerie. And thank you, Donna. And thank you, Mihku.
You're going to have to move up the mic a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, you're way taller than us.
You're tall, guy. Is that going to go up?
I think that might do it.
Because I think you have to be really close. You can also remove the mic if you'd like.
Okay. Causing a disturbance already. Uh-oh. Okay, so I'd like to read first a poem from 3 Nations Anthology 2 by Cheryl Savageau. And Cheryl is of Abenaki and French-Canadian heritage, was born in central Massachusetts. Her Dirt Road Home Poems book was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. So I'd like to read Water, Nebi. We breathe the traveling clouds and drink what falls, glistening from cliffs and into whirlpool, basins carved in granite on its way to the sky. Water me, glisten me, carve and whirlpool me, cascade me, white water me, sing me, babble me, pool me, pond me, swamp me, bog me, trout and salmon me, frog and dragonfly me, loon and otter me, breathe me the humid sky, while leaves gather pools of summer air. Nebi, we say, Wulika Nebi, the water is good. That's from my friend Cheryl. And so now I'd like to take you on a journey with bear, coyote, and raven from east to west. And we're going to start off with a poem that's in the anthology as well, called Cedar, Sage, Sweetgrass. Coyote and raven laughed as my claws got caught up in the fine strands of sweetgrass as I tried to braid. I swore, forgetting my human voice. I couldn't help myself. The smell of the earth and sweetgrass brought out the claws. Cedar, sage, sweetgrass. They found me in the blueberry fields outside of Calais. Blue, smacking lips created a strange contrapuntal line to raven's flight. Coyote stole from the edge of the field, looking cautiously. Cedar, sage, sweetgrass. Time for a trip. Smacked my lips. Coyote looked west, stood on two legs and tucked his hair under his hat. Cedar, sage, sweetgrass. What of the medicine? I said, finding my voice. We'll be back, said Raven, flying away. The next one's called Buffalo Blues. We climbed down from the back of an 18-wheeler on the edge of the Great Plains. A freak Alberta clipper had dumped 6 inches of snow. The warm sun made the plains look like an Appaloosa, snow and June grass. I played my harmonica, each note lost in the vastness of grass and snow and sky. Raven flew, coyote foraged. I played blues about this horse nation, the buffalo calf woman, and the times I could talk to people and they understood, and how it felt to be so alone now, each note evaporating as I played like the Appaloosa fields. A horse trailer stopped next to me. They led a colt out. He took in the air and danced. Coyote paused to listen. Raven circled above. I played on and on. Well, now I'm still disturbing things, huh? I didn't want to do it in the microphone because it'd be like, ah. Finding a powwow. 1. Raven, Coyote, and I decided to go to a powwow near Cheyenne. We broke out our native 3-piece suits, mocks, ribbons, shirts, and jeans. Our voices inhibited by dust, we stopped for 1 beer. Next thing I knew, there were 3 Indians in lockup. We missed the whole damn thing. Who's going to bail out 3 Indians? even when they were wearing three-piece suits. 2, Raven and Coyote walked out of Cheyenne and parted a while. Raven hit the wind. Coyote, well, who the hell ever knew where that guy went? I stopped in a vast cornfield to smoke some herb. Couldn't find my way to the road. Cars whizzed by, heart beating, green corn tassels laughing. I spent 3 hours out there, took a nap. When I woke up, hell, I was just in Nebraska. Climbed the bank to where the fecund soil met greasy tar. Walk into Reno. Raven, Coyote, and I bent into the wind and walked towards the city. It's a curious thing about vagabonds and their coats. They hold insects, mesquite, tiny fingers of tumbleweeds. We found the city street, desert abruptly meeting asphalt. It was not long before we were drunk to the sound of buzzing, snapping electrical wires. We sang with coarse sanded throats, melody resounding and ending abruptly where the tar met the sand. The continuous buffet. An interesting notion hit Coyote. Suppose I just wait by a dumpster. That way I won't have to do all this endless searching. It'll be a continuous buffet. Raven looked at him slyly. Sure, why not give it a shot? That day, Coyote ate like a king. Fatigued by gluttony, he lay behind the dumpster. This way I shall never be caught, he thought. In the early morning, a loud monster came and swallowed Coyote's kingly feast in one gulp. On top of this insult, it set the dumpster on his tail. Raven laughed all morning long. The continuous buffet, too. It took Raven 3 days to find me. My paws were elbow deep in a hollow trunk, my lips smacking honey. Oh, all right, I said, retracting golden-hued claws. We hitched back to L.A. in 2 rides. The last one was with a guy named Lucky, who hawked stuff at gas stations for fuel. We drank sangria, smoked fat, cheap cigars, and told urban legends. Lucky dropped us off in Watts at 3 a.m. I played harmonica. Raven worked the crowd. We needed money for Coyote's broken tail. Continuous buffet 3. Well, there was that dumb shit, slunk behind the dumpster, sobbing. Bear picked up the green, rusty box with one paw. Coyote took off fast, howling down the alleyway. It didn't take long to hit desert, less time still to hide and whimper where no one could hear, except maybe lizards and such. They have their own kind of laughter. 4. I awoke with a start. The cold desert night filled with stars and black sketches of jagged mountains. Coyote howled in a distant canyon. Raven was buried in an old ratty sleeping bag, his hair the night against iridescent skin. Something was stuck in my eye. I fell back to sleep and dreamed of digging OSHA root. Dust kicked up and collected other dust, becoming stars and constellations. Mules on the Grand Canyon rim. Well, I guess the thing that bothers me is the asymmetry. Fat, wide blobs atop our fine symmetrical muscle, hailing from places unimaginative, short names, harsh as commands, Iowa, Ohio. White blobby offspring riding our fine backs, looking like the wet circle on cones that drip on us at the start of the journey. Can't we just throw them and run, said the novitiate. The master smiled. I had a dream once about open spaces, running arroyos and wind on my mane, eating only what occurred to me. Others gathered. He talked like this through the night. If a child kicks one stone into another, surely he'll find a poet. The universe seems to align itself so. Walking steep canyon trails, even a mule finds poetry. Thank you. And now Donna.
It's kind of... Okay, we'll try that. Okay. Well, thank you, and you have to bear with me because I'm not used to reading poetry like these guys. But I do have a few, and the first one I want to read is one that I've read a number of times on my Wabanaki Windows show, and I think it's pretty appropriate for Columbus Day. And that's the name of this, Columbus Day, by Jamie Durham. In school, I was taught the names of Columbus, Cortez, and Pizarro, and a dozen other filthy murderers. A bloodline all the way to General Miles, Daniel Boone, and General Eisenhower. No one mentions the names of even a few of the victims. But don't you remember Chask, whose spine was crushed so quickly by Mr. Pizarro's boot? What words did he cry into the dust? What was the familiar name of that young girl who danced so gracefully that everyone in the village sang with her before Cortez's sword hacked off her arms as she protested the burning of her sweetheart? That young man's name was Many Deeds, and he had been a leader of a band of fighters called the Red Stick Hummingbirds, who slowed the march of Cortez's army with only a few spears and stones, which now lie still in the mountains and remember. Green Rock Woman was the name of that old lady who walked right up and spat in Columbus's face. We must remember that. And remember Laughing Otter, the Taino who tried to stop Columbus and was taken away as a slave? We never saw him again. In school, I learned of heroic discoveries made by liars and crooks. The courage of millions of sweet and true people was not commemorated. Let us then declare a holiday for ourselves and make a parade that begins with Columbus's victims and continues even to our grandchildren who will be named in their memory. Because isn't it true that even the summer grass here in this land whispers those names, and every creek has accepted the responsibility of singing those names? And nothing can stop the wind from howling those names around the corners of the school. Why else would the birds sing so much sweeter here than in other lands? Now, here's my first poem. It's not really, well, it's kind of. It's like, was written when I was 19, and I had served some time in Vietnam. And I find that's when when your best poetry comes out, is during trauma, or, So remember, I was very naive at this time. I've learned a lot more later. But it's called The Other World. And I mentioned the freedom bird. Now, freedom birds were, those of you in Vietnam or veterans know what that term means, but freedom bird is the airplanes that fly in and bring in soldiers, but the freedom part is when they fly back home to the United States. So the other world. I stepped off the freedom bird into another world. A world of profound beauty, and yet a world of desolation and despair. Just as a newborn babe comes into the world, so came I. Into a world I knew nothing of, unto a people I knew nothing of. Why was I here? I walked down the war-torn streets of the village, not knowing the answer. As I walked, I looked down and saw the tattered remains of a newspaper, and on the front page, a picture of a man holding the lifeless body of his infant son. There was emptiness in his eyes, as tears of a lifetime flowed down his face. In that instant, I knew the answer. I was here to help save this country, this other world, and in so doing, save mine. Now, my next poem was written, I think, the day after 9/11, and it's called 10,000 Eagles. 10,000 eagles flew that day across the bright blue sky to meet the spirits on their way from fiery, smoke-filled tombs. They soared above the dark black clouds billowing from the earth and hovered for a moment there and saw the face of doom. 10,000 eagles gathered and swooped down beneath the clouds. They found the spirits one by one and plucked them from their plight. They carried each new spirit through the black and hate-filled clouds. They gave them each a shelter wrapped in warm wings, oh so tight. They gave them strength and comfort too on their unexpected flight. On swift wings they flew towards their final destination, where each spirit knew, without any hesitation, there would be peace and love and harmony. They would forever be wrapped within the eagle's wings through all eternity. 10,000 eagles flew that day as all the world stood still and watched in shock and horror as the tragedy unfurled. Now we are left here on this earth to face the billowing clouds, and our eyes search for the eagles as we say our prayers out loud. May our spirits soar on eagle's wings above the dark black clouds of hatred, murder, and revenge that keeps us hatred-bound. 10,000 eagles flew that day as all the world stood still. The eagles flew above those clouds. Perhaps someday we will. Now I'm going to take an excerpt from my play, one of my plays, and it's called Gluscabe, Creation in the Venetian Basket. Now this scene is Hazel, who is ill, and she has two of her friends, Jane and Georgia, who are really worried about her because they think that she may pass on. So Hazel says, "I don't plan on dying anytime soon, but the old ones always said, we were never meant to live forever. I have often thought about my journey. I do know that when it is my time, these will be my words to both of you. We were never meant to live forever. Every single one of us must walk on. You need to understand, I am finishing my journey. I am excited. Yes, excited. I will see the ancestors. I will take my place in the circle. Remember, my friends, I will always be near you. The times we have had together, good times and bad times, will be a part of who you are. You will hold me in your memories every time you close your eyes, and even think of me, I'll be there. We were never meant to live forever. Every single one of us must walk on. This is my promise to you. Every time you close your eyes or even think of me, I'll be there. Always remember my promise to you. Don't be sad. When I leave this body, I will continue my life's journey. I will continue, not end my life's journey. One last thing. Crying and sadness and death are the emotions of those who are still here. those who will never see their loved ones again on this earth. They mourn for themselves. Don't confuse that sadness with sorrow for me. We were never meant to live forever. Every single one of us must walk on. If I go, where I'm going, there will be no more pain or sorrow. I will be free from this body. I will be so happy. I will come to you in dreams. I will always be there for you. So don't be sad. We were never meant to live forever. Every single one of us must walk on. So, and then we go a little bit further into the play. And Hazel she's not feeling well, and she's sort of like in a unconscious dream state. And so she's in a cabin, and she's in bed, and they're sort of sitting around her. And in her mind, in Hazel's mind, she's walking through white clouds. She can barely see. She sees a twinkling light in the distance. It's coming closer to her. She waits for it to reach her, and when it does, it speaks to her in a very familiar voice. "Ma, is that you?" "Yes, honey, it's me." "I'm so happy to hear your voice. Why can't I see you?" The twinkling light turns into the image of her mother. "Here I am. Can you see me now?" "Yes, oh yes, I have missed you so much. I have come to let you know that I am here waiting for you. When your spirit journey begins, I don't want you to be afraid." "I'm not afraid. You taught me well. Take my hand, Hazel. You know, like you did when you were little." Hazel takes her mother's hand. "I will guide you." "Where? Where are we going?" "You will see." "Let's go, Ma. Walk with me." "I've thought about you so many times, Ma, wondering if you were still watching me and if you knew what I was doing in my life. If you heard the story songs I sang them for you." I know, Hazel. I've been with you every day. I love to hear you sing. When I first began my spirit journey, I stayed very close to you, trying to give you a sign that I was all right, and that you would be too. I couldn't reach you. You were too distraught and emotional, crying and just inconsolable. You were so angry. I just wanted you to feel my presence. Tell those you love to be still and listen and watch. If they do this, they will not miss the signs that you are trying to give them. Above all, they must know that the spirit journey is to be welcomed and celebrated, not feared. I will tell them. We are here, Hazel. You mean Mount Katahdin? Yes, see the light in the distance? It's the end of that. One more. I know I'm probably a few minutes early, but I could go on, but I'm not gonna. I'm started to write a new book, and the title of the book is called "We Stole Your Land, So Get Over It." So, this poem, I haven't figured out if I'm going to put it at the beginning of the book or at the end, but it's called "It Is Up to Us." It is up to us to overcome our invisibility. It is up to us to use our voices to tell our stories. It is up to us to rise from the ashes of genocide and proclaim that we are still here. So we will tell our own story with our voice so you can hear us, so we can shine a light on those dark deeds that were done to us. It is up to us to tell our own story, not to change history, but to be seen and heard. It is up to us to set our goal to enlighten others, It is up to us to tell our historic truth. If this results in change of any kind, it will be more than we have hoped for. It is up to us.
Good afternoon. I am so pleased to be sharing the stage with a couple of excellent people that I admire. I really enjoyed hearing their work. I'm going to read a couple of short poems from a new manuscript I'm working on. It's in process right now, in progress. And then I'm going to finish with a song from Michigan because I think it's apropos for the time of year. That's a long historical poem. Some of you may have heard it before, but I really want it to get out into the world and be heard. I did bring a few broadsides with me today. The poem is in Port City Poems Anthology, but it doesn't get a lot of, spreading out, so I brought a few extra copies. I'm just going to start with Psalm for Cetaceans. Our relations who dwell in the oceans, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom thrive, thy will to survive continue as it has for eons. Give us this day our daily dread of declining catches. Forgive us our oil spills and cruise ship kills, though we seldom forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into apathy, but deliver us from ignorance and human greed. For thine is the blue world and the power and the story of life itself. Forever and ever. Amen. This is Frequencies We Do Not Comprehend. I've been thinking a lot, about the waters, and the new manuscript is centered on that. But when we think about the waters, we also have to think about our relations that dwell there, even the little tiny creatures. Frequencies we do not comprehend. Captive dolphins are conversing, a new language, scientists say, different from wild talk. Each pulse a phoneme, words, spoken sound glyphs, all clicks and whistles, messages and meaning. Through the world, through the water. Our sea cousins, dark-eyed, playful, smarter than we will ever be, imprisoned as they are, I wonder what they say to one another in those small moments of release and connection. Each 10-minute interval researchers allow. Confinement, psychologists note, is a singular torture. I wonder if they comfort each other, utter cries of hope, or counsel patience in soft churrings. Surely they know we two-leggeds are not the chosen ones. We never were. Landwalkers, we carry our sins with us like clumsy baggage. Chained detritus, we drag along the well-worn human path. Ownership and commerce, harvest and disposal, sustained by the heart that pumps our tainted blood, slow poison, greed, indifference, collateral damage. Even now, frequencies we do not comprehend. Pray they forgive us their short slave life. 40 years to 5, made to leap, circle, and dive on cue like living puppets over and over, again and again. Pray they forgive us their forced labor, made to haul the weight of humans grasping their dorsal fin, offspring ripped from a mother's side, food dead and frozen. One day we will understand their dolphin talk, revelations in extremis, a divine catechism for true believers, humanity and all our ailing relations. Perhaps we will embrace a new religion, a better religion. Maybe then we will finally set them all free. This is Afterlife, again from the new manuscript. And Chiksedewin just means listen. Listen to me. Chiksedewin, when I end, my skin will be scraped, stretched over false ribs, make a vessel to traverse the sea so that others like me can be hunted more readily. My fat will be rendered to cook savory dishes, light the darkness. My bones will be sculpted and pierced, draped on a hunter's neck, one who desires only to be something like me, someone who does not need to steal or borrow courage. My teeth will be carved into wondrous shapes, their substance intricate, prismatic crystals, a hardened canvas, gouged and furrowed with images of ships, women, and sea giants. The human hand will hold the weapon with an easy familiarity. My death, it will be written, was a kindness, because my kin had all gone into oblivion before me. Okay, and this is Song from Machigan. I don't know if all of you know the history of Portland, but it had several names, and obviously we are on Indigenous land, and this is sort of the compressed story of how that displacement came about. Machigan, your truest name before the French and English came to raid the land of her tallest trees and pull the fish from her blue knee. The fur they took in trade for pots and drink and rusty blades could not sate their endless hunger or abate their supernatural greed. O Machigan, your name is dust. You have begun to bleed. Casco now is how they call the great neck as the mighty trees fall. Land divided among men is stolen once again. Weymouth kidnaps 5 of us before Gorgeous and John Mason arrive to claim the eastern lands, and now we die and die. Treaties cannot last when traders block the fish from moving past. Cows trample our corn, yet you say we are a thorn in your side. You are the ones who cannot abide by your own laws. When we fight, we have just cause to grieve for Machigan and those who now walk beyond this world. French or English, we must choose, or so you say, if not to lose the land we hold most dear. We come away only to starve anew, and now our hearts are hard. In spring of 1690, we gathered with Castine, our anger risen like the streams you choked with nets to starve our kin. We followed one trusted chief, whose child the baron sought to keep. Madakawando leads the men, and killing will begin. Just for today, we are many, and shall break our anger on your flesh, burn your walls to nothingness. 400 fighting men and more with French to batter down the door. We come to Michigan to prove Fort Loyal cannot stand against our warring hand. And English is a worse brigand than any Frenchman, so they tell us when we fight and burn your forts down in the night. We are not the ones you trusted to survive. White flag waved before your eyes. That was Bernice, in charge of keeping order and giving quarter. Trust is almost always wise, but not to trust your English lies. Thus you learn the bitter price you pay for our forgiveness. 6 wars were fought here, laying claim to land that many tried to tame until we finally surrendered. Penobscot, Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, Abenaki with little left you had not plundered from our Dawnland home. The Beaver Wars were fought for pelts, King Philip's War, abuse of trade. And Squando's child drowned just to see if he could swim like some wild river otter. Then scalp hunters seeking bounty in the south returned to seek us out. King William's War fought for land. Fort William Henry could not stand against our warring hand. Abenaki and French, who drove the English from the lower Kennebec. In 1701, Queen Anne's War came to our shores, when once again French and English wanted more and more and more. Greedy bullets, dripping blades, smoking battlements laid waste, and always we must take a side, knowing we can no longer hide from settlers thick as leaves on trees, coveting everything they see. Dummer's War for William Dummer, who sent Colonel Westbrook to burn our homes and fields and starve us out. Norwalk fell 100 dead, Pigwacket too, and if you wore the other shoe, it would be dipped in red. At last, your war with France burned high for 7 years. We had nothing left to lose when forced to choose between the evils that befell our people. 3 and 4 of us was dead, gone to the wind. Finally, you said, the line was drawn. In 1759, those words you give to white man's time. Our demise, battle victorious, so-called history and glory, we fought for land paid in blood and bone. Michigan just one of many. First become Casco, then Old Falmouth. Years wore on and Portland, Maine became the name. The massacre you blame us for is but the story of your shame, those sins for which you must atone. Michigan was not your own. Thank you.
Okay, we got a couple prompts going on in the back there. Nothing like a former educator, right, to have a bunch of prompts hanging around. Riding hard to Santa Fe. 1. Oh, wait. That's what happens when too many prompts get in my way, that's for sure. I feel like I'm battling this thing. It's like, epic battle. There we go. That's true, that's very true. Riding hard to Santa Fe. Tucked my hair under my hat. Tiny particles of sand, sage, and tumbleweed blasted my face. Storm coming. Pulled on my overcoat, head bent. Stepping from vision had always been hard for me. Ahead, the glow of city lights. 2, felt tar underneath my feet, the give of sand, soil abruptly ending, greasy hardness penetrating bone. They said there wasn't much to eat in the mountains that winter. Town officials gave the go-ahead to shoot bears feeding in dumpsters. Out back of Santa Fe, rich folks were trying to lop off mountaintops and such. I shook my head, hair fell, coat unraveled. I heard the click-clack of my extending claws on the hard road. 3, let them shoot me. Saw a family in a dumpster once. Best act of fatherhood I ever saw. Kind, gentle eyes, feeding his family, nothing for himself. When discovered, he was chased and beaten as his family ran to safety. Saint survival, I call them. Hell, they even chased their own kind from dumpsters. Might as well tempt fate. I jumped into the rusted steel container. Let them shoot. I smacked loudly on day-old honey-glazed donuts. 4, an old man approached, my thoughts then of earth and roots and healing. The old man laughed. I laughed. I climbed out of the dumpster and we walked in the road to desert sand. That night we smoked and sweated and told stories. His tribe, my tribe. And we remembered a time when we walked together for a short while. 5, tucked my hair under my hat, could taste tobacco and fry bread. Fur and claws retracted, I walked by his kitchen window. We stopped to look at one another. My ponderous steps slowly transitioned. Stomping, I laughed. There was a hell of a thunderstorm that day outside of Santa Fe. All right, so this is audience participation part. We get to make some noise. Oh boy. All right. Yeah, you can start. All the merrier. So go ahead and I'll get started if you want to rattle around. And this one's called Everyone's a Critic. So if you want to just rattle them about. They found an old guitar in a dump outside of Santa Fe. I knew this once, said Bear. He picked up the guitar and immediately broke all the strings with his claws. Shit. Coyote pounded on old, discarded tins of peaches and pears. Raven laughed at Bear and sang an old song he had learned in Crowese. Damn it, Ethel, muttered Ernest, trying to sleep in his house by the dump. What the hell is that infernal racket? You can keep going if you want, that's all right. All right, I'm just going to finish with one more, and then we're going to go into a new piece I'm working on with Osha Root about the, we'll get to that in a second. This is back in New England. Where does he go? They assumed he went to Florida. On a particularly cold, biting day, they predicted he would be gone. Green frog skins lazily danced in the wind and mingled with red and gold leaves on the frosted wheatgrass. He walked slowly up the mountain. Halfway, he took off his hat and coat and placed them neatly in a hole in an old oak tree. He stretched his paws on the cool forest floor. He ate dirt and bark and binding material that would enable a long rest without movement. He tasted all life that has ever been or ever will be in the dirt and smiled wearily. The den smelled of aged fur and trapped breath. He let himself feel into the space, and when ready, circled 3 times and nestled in the soft silt. He slept and dreamed constellations that appeared in distant galaxies. He watched beings come and go, and planets fall as their suns aged and died. He walked across galaxies in long, wide strides and offered what he could of his generous medicine. On a cool spring day, Stan saw him raking his lawn. "Which part of Florida do you go to?" Bear smiled. The northern part." Okay, so good rhythms going on there. I'm loving this. I'm a bass player, so I'm going to go with that all night long. We'll go. So the last one I'm working on with OSHA Root, and I thought I'd share it today. And it's called Blues of the Lost Places. It's a difficult choice to leave home. Some have no choice and leave memories, experiences, and ancestral prints indelible on a culture. Places where language was formulated so that Mother Earth can hear the sweet tongue of prayer for crops, harvest, and blessings for all people. Les 72. Concrete and cardboard. Aureliano tries to soothe his hungry children with an old El Salvadorian lullaby. His wife died last year on the train of death, falling, then spread upon rails as so many others for buzzards to pick clean. She was their hope. Her mother lived in Salt Lake City. He picks up their last bottle for his 3-year-old and lets him nurse water as he worries about separation and detainment camps at the U.S. border. How can I breathe again? The city's so unfamiliar, away from gatherings and collecting sweetgrass. Why must we go away to live? And why must we die in strange places without death songs to bring us back to our lands before they were taken? The EMTs don't come down here. My brother and I pick up our mother, who had just had a heart attack. I remember her yesterday, coming from work, slowly walking, as if collecting blues from the sidewalk. Been a long time since I've heard the sound of the forest swaying in the wind and the birds flying from trees with patterned flight by the rhythm of traffic. Been a long time since I ate at 3 Square, alone in the dumpster, drinking a carton of yesterday's milk. And the people stare and sequester me in their minds to invisibility. Yet I hear the steps on the cold street. Take out my harmonica and play, till birds start singing, till invisibility's superpowered eyes see, till food and housing is abundant, till the forgotten places of everything I knew and gave me reference plays back, and the lines I hold and play back and walk again in the blues of the lost places. The United States has a history of holding people against their will, keeping people from the promised American dream. Plantations, reservations, internment camps during World War II, forced education, forced adoption, the cold streets. There are children in detention camps at the southern border. There are children in detention camps at the southern border. There are children in the detention camps at southern borders. there are children in detention camps at the southern border. Thank you, rhythm section.
I guess I have to get a little bit more bluesy. That was, I just want to say, this was so wonderful and different. It has an otherness to it that makes me think and makes me regret that those of my ancestors who first came here weren't able to embrace the difference, because I can certainly feel it. It has come down through you. It hasn't gone, it has come down through you. It's tangible. And I like to think, ooh, now I'm tearing up. I like to think that your ancestors can feel it coming all the way back up through. And that we are in a different place and we're in a different time, despite the strange, awful things that we have occurring in this country. I still think that there is a dream that could be achieved. We're not there. There never was a real dream there yet. It's not there yet. So I really value what you brought. It was powerful and beautiful and rich. And I just feel the difference. I felt comforted by it in a certain kind of a way. And I would like to do a little Q&A, if you don't mind. Would you all like to come up and get on the stage and answer a few questions? If any of you have a question you'd like to ask any one of our readers, but let's give them another warm applause. I think they can stand up. Yeah, I think they'll be fine. Do any of you want to sit down, or you're up okay standing up? I think they're okay standing up. And Valerie, do you want to come up too, or? Huh? Not unless you want to be up there. Yeah, I think the readers. Yeah. So let's see. I didn't have a question planned for my first question. Do any of you have a question you might like to ask?
Thank you, all of you. Jeez. John, I had a question for you. What is OSHA root? Is it OSHA root or something?
OSHA root, yeah, it's called bear root. Actually, I carry it a lot of times and use it ceremonially, but it's a root that we use quite frequently. So it kind of looks like that and kind of looks like a little bear, right? So it's one of the medicines that we use. So OSHA root's a band that I developed doing poetry and some of the music that I create with Bob Caldwell.
I'm sorry, I called you John.
It's I was raised in a family with 5 boys named Jay, so jackass I'll even answer to. So.
Good. Does anyone else have a question? We have another mic here. I think I would like to ask all three of you, what do you think about Indigenous Peoples' Day having been initiated? Do you think it's meaningful or not? Or you know, how does it sit with you? Anybody want to try that on?
All right, so I grew up and I went through the Old Town schools. And, you know, I have a poem that talks about the 2 books I grew up with, the blue book and the black book. So the blue book was history in grade school. So it was a very strange thing to be small and going to public school, and we had a section of history we had to study, and it was all about the Western expansion. The New England tribes really weren't even mentioned, so we were invisible, and I know that Donna addresses that quite a bit. So it was a very strange thing, and having the honoring of Columbus, and when I was very tiny, what's that little verse that we always learn? In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. So it was thrilling for me, after feeling that way growing up, just fairly recently, to be with Molly and Dana at the Portland School Board hearing and talking about the necessity for this change. It is exciting. We did have some pushback, but to me, it's a huge thrill. I'm almost 61, and when I was 30, I had such a fire in my belly for the activism, and now it's been decades later, and I keep thinking, really? Still, that again? So I don't know. I mean, it's been very, very exciting. And I think it's a small step, but it's an important one because it helps us hold in our awareness the necessity for inclusion and looking at all of history and being sure that children now learn a complete, true history of this country.
Well, I think it's great that we've had the Indigenous Peoples Day law, and we've had the mascot law. There's a few others. I mean, I'm glad that we've stopped calling us names and recognized who we are. But those, to me, are low-hanging fruit. So we have got a very, very long way to go, particularly when you look at Facebook and you see the comments from the political college club deriding the Indigenous Peoples Day, and so we have a long way to go, and I think that one of those things that we should be probably looking at is, at the college level now, we already have the Maine history in the elementary schools, which we're working on actually getting that taught. So I feel, and I've mentioned this to a couple of the university presidents, that we should have an orientation for every first-year college student about the history of Maine natives. So, like I said, we got a long way to go, low-hanging fruit, but hey, it's better than nothing, and it's a step forward.
Yeah, you can probably tell from my poetry, I was one of those where our family left New England. I was raised out west, so my contact for a long time was with the western tribes, and it took a long time to come back and realize my connection to the eastern tribes. But going with that law, I can't remember what it was called, Donna, but where you went out during LA, LD 235 or something, where we went.
291 is the nickname for it, but it's the Maine Indian history law.
Right, so I went out, my elders wanted me in this area to teach at schools and stuff, and I think what you said about low-hanging fruit makes, you're exactly right. They couldn't even identify one tribe. Most of the kids that the different schools, they couldn't list any of the tribes of Maine, so I think we have a long way to go. When I was a kid, I was taught that out west, we were taught Custer was a hero, and all the folks we heard about, the conquerors were the heroes, and that was a really hard thing in Arizona, which has 1/3 population, or I'm probably getting that wrong, but a huge population of Diné, Hopi population. So.
John, do you know the year that Indians got the vote in Maine? It's the 70s?
It was, it's a little complicated. In 1957, the tribes were given the vote. There was a referendum in Maine that allowed tribes to be given the vote. That's in the Constitution. However, that was the federal vote. There was a federal election that year. And we actually didn't get to vote in state elections for complicated reasons, districts and that sort of thing, until 1967, I believe.
Yeah, so I was a child with my gramp, and I was learning about these other tribes. I was invisible in school. It's not just me. I'm just the lens, through which I share this with you. But I remember being on the river and in the woods with my gramp as a little kid, and he goes, "We can't vote." And I was in school learning about the House of Representatives and the checks and balances and all that. Very strange feeling to be that marginalized right within your own community.
Just a comment on that. In 1920, I'm going to say 3 or 4, the United States recognized or made natives United States citizens. Remember the exact date? It was in the 20s. Right. So in Maine, in 1941, the legislature, we still weren't voting, and the legislature asked the Maine Supreme Court for a solemn occasion. That's a question that the legislature has for in law, and usually it is to the Maine Supreme Court. So this question they asked was, because of the Citizenship Act, and it is now 1941, and if we use a poll tax, can the tribes then vote? Can Native people then vote? 5 days later, the response came from the Maine Supreme Court. That is an illegal question, and we cannot answer it.
Did you have something?
I think we have a question right here.
So, kind of a question, kind of just like a basic comment more than anything else. Maine, of course, is part of the United States, and the United States being the mother country.
Sorry, I was a little muffled.
All right. Maine, of course, is part of the United States. And the United States, as we all know, is the mother country, and we have all the privileges. We've always had more privileges than a lot of different, we've had a lot for a great long time. And being that Maine is part of that, the United States, it's going to fall into the category of being maybe most likely, but at least more likely than most, to overlook a lot, to be somewhat one-sided, and to be and to have a strong tendency to put a spin on a story where we really don't look at all that much except pinpoint tunnel vision of us. So I was just thinking, to change things and to go about amending laws and what have you, it takes a lot, and that's all about control. And the thing is, when we try and control things, I'll get to the point real quick, hopefully. When we try to control things, like you think about Buddhist, Zen, and what have you, that type of mindset, we get in our own way. And so to go about this in a roundabout kind of way might, if you could add this into the scenario, give it some thought, it might help. If we were to somehow have different people on a panel and, show them on like a channel, a public television channel of different races, some U.S. citizens, foreign, Native Americans, American Indians, I'm not sure what is politically correct, and then have them say that in general, we all kind of lean in that direction where we put our own spin on the story. We write our own story, and it's through our own perception that we write that story, and kind of get some, feedback bouncing around where people start to understand that we are pretty much our own problem in that. We're not really helping ourselves by not mentioning other people and having them be just as much a part of our story as we are of their story. It's in our best interest. That's what I'm saying. It's just in an indirect kind of way. Instead of being, I want to control this, I want to do this specifically, go a little more macroscopic in the way you do that. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, and I always have said, communication and education equal understanding.
Absolutely.
So here we are together. I'm always moved by all poetry readings, all getting together live with each other in such a heart-opening way. And I want to thank you again from my deep heart for you traveling so far and being with us today. Valerie, do you have anything you'd like to say before we close off?
That gentleman who was just up here, there are tons and tons of ways of educating. You know, Donna Loring has this book about her time as the tribal representative. And let me tell you, it is like a daily diary of the misery and I'm going to say it, the bullshit she had to put up with in the House of Representatives for the state of Maine. So this is a huge education all by itself. I hope that it's at the library, and if it is, you should all take it out and read it, because it just shows you just day to day the drain and the misunderstanding and just pushing against walls and all that stuff. It's just, bless you for writing it. Yeah.
Representative Rachel Talbot Ross is here. And she is the only woman of color in that legislature. And believe me, I know exactly what she's going through. And we kind of help each other along. And I'm there for you, Rachel.
Linda, we do have one more quick question here, if you don't mind.
I think, there's another question.
Hi, my name's Alex. I was just curious, when do you think Turkey Day is going to change? Yeah. I'm hoping that we change Turkey Day around.
You know, I celebrate Turkey Day. It's one of my favorite holidays. As a matter of fact, Native people, we had more than just one Thanksgiving. We would have Thanksgiving, I don't know, every month. So I don't have a problem with Thanksgiving.
I think that that's really true, and every day we have the blessing of simple things like being awake in 24 brand new hours, the eyes that we have, the air that we breathe, the things that we see, the people we share time with. So I think every day is a Thanksgiving day, and I love that kind of beauty and celebration. So when I'm doing my prayers in the morning, including all in the cosmos, I feel like, what a beautiful day to be alive. What a Thanksgiving on this day. Willie Wan.